Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the next major content update of the War Within, patch 11.1 of the Undermine update, currently available for testing over on the PTR, is actually really shaping up nicely, with all of the endgame content going through a variety of changes, from the many improvements like bad luck protection coming to the raid content, the dungeon adjustments with lots of tuning, affix changes, as well as some brand new rewards for you to work towards, but also quite a lot of attention is being put into the delves for Season 2 with a ton of different improvements, from a tank brand which is surprisingly highly effective, a whole array of curios that is being revamped for Season 2, massive improvements to quality of life when it comes to just walking through delves and exploration, the power-ups that you can pick up, but also the reward structure of delves as well. So those of you that are really interested in delves and solo player endgame progression and content are looking to get a fairly massive buff heading to the patch 11.1. With delves finally being ready for testing right now as of this week for 11.1, I wanted to dive into them and take a much deeper look at how they play, the reward structure, and everything that is improved with the delve content so far. And I wanted to go over all of those improvements in this video. As always though, if you guys want to see more updates for the future content update of 11.1, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So delves as of this week are finally ready for testing, along with some of the more dungeons, more class changes, a bunch of new revamps, and a couple of raid fights, although we saw some delays there as well. So this time around, I do want to go over the delves in terms of what's generalized and new changes for delves, but also what is new for Season 2 specifically. Now we can finally test it, because we now have a brand new NPC that can grant Bran a bunch of levels, although he's kind of capped to level 55 right now, so you can't really test Bran at level 80 and his full powerful potential. Though Bran, we do find out, gets to retain all levels from Season 1 heading into Season 2. His level max cap is going to be raised from 60 max to 80. So if you could get Bran to 60 before Season 2, then it's going to mean less grind all the way to 80. But at the very least, Bran does get to keep a lot of his power heading into the new season, so you won't have to retrain Bran again. Bran also gets a bunch of new curios, and at first I thought that the curios were going to be something that was just gonna be added to an existing set of curios, like maybe we'll get 2 new combat curios and 2 new utility curios, but no, they're actually changing their curios completely. There's just a whole new set of them that you could equip Bran with. A bunch of new combat curios that can really augment Bran, but augment your experience within delves through a variety of different ways. And all of them do seem a little bit more interesting than the Season 1 curios. Like there's a pinged chip augment rune or augment curio that basically empowers Bran, giving him more health, more damage, more healing, but now there's going to be a little combat bot that will periodically spawn in to try to take out Bran. So let's say if you have Bran as a tank and you want to keep him super effective as a healer, as long as you can take out that combat bot or CC it, then Bran is going to be an absolute powerhouse. So it's like very interesting trade-in curios, or one that modifies the egg to automatically taunt enemies so it breaks immediately, but the egg now spawns in Mechasaurus instead of T-Rexes that deal fire damage, so it's a lot more effective and modifies an ability that I think a lot of players don't really invest time into killing Bran's egg as often. And there's a variety of different curios that I think are actually a lot better than Season 1 curios, where you had like some decent ones with combat, but not that many. Where we got the biggest upgrade is in utility curios, because previously for Season 1 there was like one good curio that you would use in combat for Zekvir and any of the high-end delves, but the rest of them were just not that good. This time around, every single utility curio comes with a benefit that is combat related, but also exploration related, like Loot Radar. This one is basically every few seconds is going to scan the environment, letting you know any treasures that are in the delve. So this not only marks missing curios, but also any hidden treasures that a player might not be able to notice when you're trying to get all the treasures for an achievement or something, or if you're trying to just get additional treasures for the most amount of rewards for a delve. So this one actually helps you out finding them, but also marks enemies that are below a certain health threshold to take more damage. So there's like a little bit of utility for exploration, but also combat effectiveness, and every single one of them seems to have some kind of a combat effectiveness support added to them for every single one of them. And it's actually pretty awesome, because it seems like there's a lot more variety in utility curios for you to explore. Bran as a tank also, I tried out as a healer, because what reason why they added Bran as a tank specifically for Season 2 is I heard a lot of feedback from healers feeling like when you play as a healer and you have Bran in DPS mode, he doesn't draw as much aggro as he should, so then you end up having to take a lot of the brunt to the face. When Bran is a healer and you're also a healer, he just doesn't do enough healing in order to keep both of you alive. So healers, if you want to play a healer role, it was a little bit harder to play with Bran, so they added a tank role so that you could now fully play as a healer, rotating your cooldowns, focusing on healing your group, while Bran takes a lot of the aggro, and they really made Bran a very surprisingly good tank. He has a group ability, so he can yoink enemies away from you, and he uses pretty aggressively. He has a slam that taunts enemies nearby. He drops down a sentry totem that can empower your abilities. He drops down a brown bear that does just a ton of damage, and anybody within the bear or near the bear also gets defensive bonuses as well. So Bran is surprisingly a very effective tank. And playing with Bran as a Disc Priest, for the most part, it feels like he's super aggressive at getting aggro, like surprisingly good. I was expecting for Bran to maybe get some of the mobs because, I mean, it's an AI NPC. I just didn't really have a lot of expectations for it, but they're really trying to spruce him up to be super aggressive at aggro and very, very, very tanky and super opening his face, constantly controlling them, busting out the shotgun and a shield and a pistol and just doing a ton of damage, just enough to draw all the aggro to him. That allows you to fully play a healer role, supporting Bran, rotating defensive cooldowns in some cases, which is actually super fun. I do think that Bran maybe needs some kind of like a proper interrupt ability, because it doesn't seem like he actually has any type of an interrupt effect as part of his kit. Because there are some delve bosses at the end of a run where if you have an interrupt, I mean, the fight is basically not non-threat. But as a Disc Priest, you notice, since I don't have a kick myself, I actually was struggling and having to rotate my defenses, which is fun from a healer perspective. Like, you go through a fight and you're having to rotate your defensive cooldowns and utility cooldowns to keep you and Bran alive, which is fun from that angle. But as soon as you play a healer that has a proper interrupt, I mean, it just trivializes the fight completely. So I wonder if that's something that can maybe be adjusted. But if they were to give Bran an interrupt, I think it would definitely fix it completely, especially for the one healer that doesn't have a proper interrupt as part of their kit. Another thing they did for some of the more generalized delve changes is they adjusted a lot of the existing delves, either with new scenarios, but also with some quality of life improvements. Now, the actual scenarios themselves and the little components of like the story stuff or the events that happen in delves, they're not that different compared to what we've had so far. In most cases, you will still be fighting the same final bosses of each delve on the instance, but some of the more quality of life stuff will come in from some of the unique exploration mechanics of delves, like the machinoid delves with these spores that usually run up to you if you get too close and you gotta DPS them down. They're now stationary. They're no longer something you target, but they're kind of like a mine, and if you get too close, they start to grow and grow and grow, and if you could back away fast enough, they kind of start to gas out, or if they stand too close to them, they will start to explode. So it's more about positioning rather than having to run away from these spores that are constantly chasing you, making it much easier and a lot less stressful to get through them. Or in like some of the Hollowfall delves, like the Nightfall Sanctum, instead of having these circles that kind of move sporadically and sometimes it will just run over the player and start barraging you down, there are now more trip lines that are very, very visible, very easy to get around with. And if you trip into one, that's entirely your fault, but they're easily avoidable now. So it's a lot easier to get around the delve. So it seems like a lot of the frustrating elements of delve exploration are being toned back by a bunch from existing delves, and that is super nice to overall see and play through. It actually feels really good. Then also we have bountiful delve rotations. Delves are going to be in a little bit of a different rotation. Normally a single delve is active in every zone, but right now we have Fungofolly available. And then if you check out Ring of Deeps, no delves are available. The Ashkahet, no delves are bountiful, but now 2 delves are bountiful in Hollowfall. We have Skittering Breach as well as a Nightfall Sanctum. And there should be a 3rd delve that's bountiful, but I'm not seeing it anywhere as of this moment. But the delves are going to be on a bit of different rotation to try to make sure that every single delve gets to be bountiful at some point throughout the week, instead of like what they do with Ring of Deeps, where let's say they'll have the Dread Pit bountiful twice in a row, and then it'll be Waterworks bountiful twice in a row. So they try to create a bit more variety so you're in a different delve every single time you dive into it. Besides this, they also added 2 new delves. One is Excavation Site 9, which you got to run through, as well as Street Side Sluice. All of them seem like decent delve additions. I can't really say much more of that. It just adds a bit more variety for a seasonal delve, and hopefully we'll continue to see them adding more delves in the future, just for the sake of variety and just for diversity in terms of not having to see the same environments, because I feel like if you're still running the same delves from season 1 over and over and over into season 2, that can get old very, very quickly. Now, that's going to cover all of the general changes of delves heading into season 2, but season 2 specific changes are going to be plentiful. Like, one of them is to improve the reward structure from tier 9s and above. They noticed pretty easily that players, once they defeated Zekvir, players wanted to do more difficult content from delves and get rewarded for it. Like, we have tier 9, 10, and 11, and there's achievements related to them, but a lot of players wish there was a reward related to them, because without a better reward, there isn't as much of a reason to do any higher difficulty of delves, but players still want to get better gear, they still want to be able to progress the character, and that progression system was kind of lacking within delve content in general. So they're improving the rewards from tier 9, 10, and 11s by granting them more crests, like Ruin Crests in particular. With tier 11 bountiful delves award new gilded crests, they're still currently at a cap, which is not ideal in my opinion. I really think they should remove the cap and let players spam tier 11 delves for all of their gilded crests. I mean, especially if they want to make raids, dungeons, and delves feel very, very close to each other in terms of, or at least parallel to each other in terms of endgame content. I feel like, you know how you can spam dungeons in order to get all your gilded caps? You could do mythic raid bosses in order to get gilded as well. You should be able to do and spam a huge portion of your tier 11 delves, I think, to get all of your gilded crest caps as well. But maybe that's something they'll adjust. Right now, it does seem like you can loot gilded crest 3 times a week, but maybe they'll listen to more community feedback and make adjustments, because if you can only loot gilded crest 3 times, it's going to take you a while before you can fully progress and upgrade all of your character's gear, especially hero track items, or if you want to start crafting items. So delve players are still likely to be funneled back into dungeons, at least minimum tier 8s, in order to get the rest of the gildeds for the week. Another thing they're trying to improve on is the delve map. Some players can get maps from delves that can grant you additional bonuses, like a bunch of hero track gear, but also gilded crests. And the maps, however, are very RNG. I am somebody who'd been doing delves on my ults a ton from season 1. I found a lot of bountiful maps, a bunch of them on multiple characters, and they're always fairly rewarding. But some players have been doing delves all season 1, and they've barely found a map, if at all found a single map whatsoever. They're just that RNG. So they're adjusting how maps are going to function for season 2. Now they're going to have maps have a higher drop rate, or rather this drop rate is going to be increased each time you run a delve and you don't find a map for the week. So kind of like a bad luck protection. However, once you find a map, that's it. That's your one map for the week. So you're more likely to find a map as you run more delves on a character, but you only are limited to a single map for the week. So at least it's going to improve the consistency of you trying to gear out a character through delves specifically, as maps will give you additional resources like gilded crests as well as another hero track item. So gearing through delves should be a little bit better. But yeah, they are at least trying to make the whole map structure and the whole map rewarding thing a little bit less RNG, which I think is a good move either way. They also added a bunch of new enemy types within delves within season 2, because the new villain of the delves is going to be Underpin, a goblin themed enemy instead of Zekvir. But this also means that there's going to be also a bunch of changes to the goblin theme stuff within the delves. Like goblin themed minions are now going to sometimes replace something like this in enemy packs and delves, very similar to how you had those generals or officers of Zekvir, those really powerful enemies that were really a pain to get through. However, these goblin themed enemies, unlike the Zekvir enemies, can actually be avoided if you maneuver yourself around delves. They don't seem to be placed literally in front of the next place you gotta go to, like in front of a boss or in front of the exit where you have to fight them. You can actually avoid them, so they're more optional enemy, but one that you may still want to fight either way, because they're called like nemesis enemies, and if you defeat them, you actually get to unlock a bonus on nemesis chest at the end of a run. So depending on the tier of delve difficulty, you'll have maybe multiple of these different nemesis encounters to fight through. And for every single one that you fight, your nemesis chest is going to be better and better and better by the end of the run. All these Nemesis enemies have also been adjusted to have a bit more visual mechanics to them, like something super avoidable, whereas Zekvir enemies were very much a DPS race, where if you have enough defenses, if you have enough health, and if you have enough DPS, then you can defeat them. If you don't meet any of those requirements, that could essentially be the end of a run. That could just be the run is ruined, the run is over. But these guys are this time around have a lot more reliably dodgeable mechanics, just something that you can actually play around with, whether you have good gear, whether you don't have good gear, so they're a little bit more fair of an encounter. So you can still avoid them if you want to. They are more optional, but in some cases, at least for Priest, I felt like I never really had to fight them, but as a rogue, I imagine you could just stealth by them, and there's no issue there whatsoever. But if you do fight them, you do get an upgraded chest at the end of the run, so it's a little bit of a reason for you to actually want to fight them, and they are a little bit more of a fair of an encounter from one to be able to test them. With the new Nemesis, we also get new affixes for the Season 2 of Delves, but they're not necessarily goblin related. Like one of the affixes I kept getting regularly is there's a hive where Nerubians are constantly spawning from, which means there's a flying Nerubian that may join in through some of the different packs that I attack with Bran, but for the most part, it's pretty easy and they're all very straightforward in terms of these affixes. They're no longer like the Zekvir affix where you walk into a trash bag, but you have no idea what it's about to do because you don't really know what the Zekvir abilities are going to be until they start doing them, until the enemies start ascending or you start to get gripped randomly with webs and such. They're a lot more straightforward and a lot more easier to get around with and to play around with. However, as you make your way through all of the different delves, you will have to kind of restart your progress because we are in Season 2, and they are increasing the rewards, but also the difficulty of delves in Season 2. So right now, you can just kind of spam delves at Tier 8 immediately because you already worked up from Tier 4, 5, 6, 7 all the way up, and maybe all the way to 11. But you'll have to restart that and do that all over again in Season 2. So you'll have to start doing delves at 4, 5, 6, all the way till 8, which is where you get the rewards. But then you can go to 9, 10, 11, and then continue to keep grinding delves in order to get additional resources if you want to. The challenges are going to be a little higher, so there's going to be a bit of a gear requirement. But if, let's say, you have like Hero Track or even Mythic Track gear from Season 1, you should be able to at least do Tier 8s pretty easily. Where I think you may start to struggle a little bit is Tier 9s, 10s, and 11s within delves. On PTR, even though we can equip some of the best gear in the game right now, you are still scaled down with all of these delves. So we don't actually get to utilize the gear that we get to wear on these vendors in order to fully play through them. But you can actually start doing some of those higher tier delves pretty early on if you have a decent understanding of your class, decent understanding of the delve and boss mechanics. But yeah, you will have to work up those delves for Season 2, which is a bit unfortunate. And besides this, for Season 2, they also wanted to make some of the random power-up pickups within delves a little bit more impactful because right now they're mostly just like a bit of a damage bonus more than anything, but they're not really consequential. But the treasure powers within delves in Season 2 are going to be improved a little. Like you'll get a shield buff where Bran will be able to shield you every time you drop super low on health, or like silence potions where Bran, no matter the role, will start to be able to drop healing potions, but they also will silence enemies whenever you run over a potion. So that could be maybe a little bit better for some of the fights where you need a lot of interrupts, or maybe can cheese bosses just by silencing some of their abilities. So that could be pretty fun. There's also a canister for heroism where Bran could then randomly start using a weaker version of Bloodlust at the start of combat on cooldown whenever it's available. So little things like that to actually make you want to go out of your way, to make you want to explore the delves, to make you want to search for treasures in order to make that run a little bit easier, because I felt like the treasures and bonus power-ups within delves weren't really as impactful, and you just kind of wanted to beeline all the way to the boss as quickly as possible to finish delves before. But now that they want you to, be able to hit up some of the higher tier delves, some of the more difficult content, they wanted to make sure to improve those power-ups to make those runs a little bit easier. So that's probably going to be a little bit more helpful when it comes to tackling some of the more challenging content within delves. But it seems like, if anything, they did think those things through. They wanted for players to do more difficult content. They want to make it rewarding, but then they also want to make sure that Bran is a little bit more functional. That's where the tank role exists. The carriers seem to be a lot more impactful, and I think that's going to actually have some meaningful choices for you to select when it comes to running all of these different delves, but also the exploration elements, how they want to make exploration and just getting around delves a little bit less of a pain, adding you optional encounters that you can technically avoid. I think that's also a really nice change. Being able to reward players for going out of the way to explore different parts of a delve, I think is also a great addition as well. So it looks like they really thought through a lot of these different components of what delves should be like in Season 2, and it seems like the system is actually going to see a sizable bit of improvement heading into this brand new season. I still do think and I do hope that they rework the whole gilded crest and how many you can earn for them within Season 2 and allow delves to actually be able to let you get all of the necessary currencies to be able to gear out your character, especially if they want to make sure delves are properly parallel to raid progression, to dungeon progression, for delves to have their own form of progression content. But at the very least, they're taking some early steps in order to try to make delves feel a little bit better, play a little bit better, and so far it's actually quite noticeable, especially if you try doing delves as a healer right now over on the PTR. As always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching and hope you guys did enjoy this update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community where we do fairly regularly discussions regarding patch 11.1 and post some of the most impactful and biggest revamps available on there. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.